Peace and blessings, fam. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. This one's going to be a little different. I'm talking to one of my brothers from this brotherhood, from this movement, one who I had the pleasure to meet back at Maui Mana 2 years ago. And one of the things for me in this work is the power of the connections and the relationships that we make with one another. If for nothing else, if we make a couple friends, if we have a couple brothers along our journey who can have our back when it gets real, that's more valuable than anything you can take away from this. And with that, would love to introduce my brother, Joe Nazerian.
What's up, man? You can call me Joe Nasty if you want.
Joe Nasty.
I saw it rolling off your tongue there for a second, but I'm so excited to be on this podcast with you today. And I know this is a collaborative effort. I'm definitely going to post this on my podcast. I'm excited to post it on yours. And it's amazing to be able to sit down with you and have this full conversation several years after I started my journey with you guys, and to just see where I am now as a person, and also to see where Sacred Sons has evolved, because I know now you guys are worldwide. I know when I first started, that wasn't even in the picture, and you guys have just grown and affected so many men. And I think the first year I went, we had 333 guys at the first event I went to, which was Oregon.
Yes, that was your first event.
That was my first event.
6,
I've never been around that many men ever.
And celebration in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah,
just to be around 300 men, right?
Dude, it was a wild experience, yeah. And feeling it's so safe in that container too was very special. And then I think the last one that I went to was when we went to North Carolina, where we had 444 men. So watching that evolve just in a short period of time to just kind of see where you guys were going with things. And so from my journey all the way until the end, and it's still not over because I still try to stay involved with you guys, and I know that you guys are now working at creating a home base in Big Bear, which I am super stoked to see this happening in my home state, so it's accessible to me. And just, you know, man, I've really so much respect for you and your team. I have a friend going tomorrow. He's going to your EMX in Arizona. One of my best friends, he was struggling with some relationship issues, and he's, you know, one of the few, like, you know, sometimes you talk to people and you're like, you know, they bring their problems to you, and you're like, well, here I think is a solution that would be able to help you. Not everyone listens, but he was one of my friends that listen, and I'm helping to sponsor him to go to one of your EMX events in Arizona, and I'm hoping that it brings the healing it did for me for him too.
Yeah, I mean, my introduction into spiritual work also came after a breakup. And someone invited me to a sweat lodge on top of a mountain with a Native American ceremony, a man who is leading it. His name is Chief Hawk Moon. I like to give the respect. But the person who invited me said, you know, I invite a lot of people, but not everybody shows up. And when someone said that to me, I was like, you know what? It's time to show up for myself. And so that's what we're inviting these brothers to do, is it's time to show up for ourselves. And when we do that, when we accept the invitations, you know this, like, it's life-changing, truly. And so to come from a broken place and to be held by brothers, to be held without judgment, to be held in acceptance, I think it's a rare thing in this world. And that's simply what we're providing. I think that's also why it's become so global. Yeah,
and I mean, I agree with you entirely. I think we live in a culture where there's not a lot of brotherhood, right? You don't get a lot of opportunities to actually interact with other men. Most of the time, you're just with your girlfriend or your significant other, whoever your partner is, and you're not getting into situations where you actually get to, you know, laugh with men, joke with men. And I think that we've forgotten through our society and just through how we're taught things that men are the strong ones that are there to support you and hold you through it all. And that's something that I've realized is, you know, I used to dump all my shit on my girlfriends and the people I'm dating, but that also destroys this beautiful feminine, masculine dynamic that we have, where your girlfriend or the person you're in a relationship with becomes your friend, and then
or your therapist. Even
or your
worse.
therapist, yeah. And so realizing that, you know, the men in my life, that we can create community and we can be there to support each other has helped my relationships. It's helped their relationships. And even after I started going to Sacred Sons, I started hosting my own men's group with my guy friends, and just literally providing a space where people can come and just talk about their issues and feel safe to do so has changed their lives radically, and it's changed my life radically.
Yeah. Safety is important. But there's something else there. There's a piece of belonging that I feel like we lose in that transition from boyhood to manhood. What I mean by that, I have 3 sons. My 3 boys, when we go to the playground, they're not like judging people, looking who to play with. They just go play.
Yeah.
And there's a time in our lives, and it's right around that time when we get those first girlfriends, right? Or that first big relationship where we put all of ourselves into that one relationship. And this is what happened to me. We discard some of that brotherhood that maybe we had as young men. And there's other reasons that it goes away, just proximity, life, time, jobs, and those things. But I feel like it's so essential that we make an effort to hold on to that and to invite brotherhood back into our lives as a resource, because that's what it is. Like when energies are low, when the cup is half empty, who do we go to as men? A lot of men are adverse to therapy. A lot of men also put it on their women, put it on their children, stuff it down until it comes out sideways.
Yeah.
And this is what we see playing out societally.
Yeah.
And so what happens when we embrace that belonging again? What happens when we invite ourselves back into the brotherhood? I love the fact that you brought it home.
Yeah.
We preach this and we teach this. Like, it's not just to keep this in some secret organization on a weekend with a bunch of strangers. This work, we take it home into our relationships, because the relationships in our lives are what give us meaning.
Yeah. You know, I was reflecting on a term that you guys use within Sacred Sons, which is re-indigenization, right? A lot of what you guys are teaching us is just getting back to the basics, right?
Oh, yeah.
Men used to play with each other. They used to roughhouse with each other. They used to joke with each other. They support each other. They spent time with each other. And I feel that we live now in a society where being a man is almost like looked negatively upon. Like, we're told not to stand up. We're told not to be loud. We're told, if you do act this way, then others are going to, say that you're basically attacking them, right? Yeah. And so because of it, we've demasculinated our male basically population. And so women don't feel as safe because, men are not standing up to be protectors and to help. And I'm not saying that women cannot protect themselves, but there's just something natural about a man standing up, being the rock and being proud of himself and having confidence. And now, we live in a world where I feel everybody has to be politically correct. They cannot have an opinion. If you have an opinion, you're automatically canceled. You're kicked out. You're called sexist. You're called to be a bigot. But I think everybody knows people's intentions, and they can hear it, they can see it, they can feel it. And if someone is being like that, cancel them. But I think a lot of the time now people are just terrified, or they're immediately canceled when they're just being their authentic version of themselves. And so I think it scares a lot of men to be their true authentic version and to be masculine, because they're just terrified of what the repercussions are.
And they've even put the term on it, toxic masculinity, on these kids. Kids are growing up right now thinking that masculinity in itself, in its truest nature, is toxic somehow.
Yeah.
And so what we are flipping the script on as Sacred Sons is calling it embodied masculinity. How do we take the aspects of masculinity that are so sacred, so serving, so respectful and respectable, and embody that within the culture? I think that's the larger part of this movement beyond the individual men's work. Beyond the men's work, this is about changing the culture of what it means to be a man and the way that we communicate about it.
Yeah.
There are toxic behaviors. There are misalignments. We see those playing out. We see those being called out.
Yeah.
At Sacred Sons, we call them in. We call our brothers back into integrity, back into alignment, and we do that through collective witness.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about teaching or knowing more than someone else, or, it's not a guru culture that we're creating. It's really about creating the power of a circle that can hold anything.
Yeah, you guys are empowering men to figure out what is really the core issue of what they're dealing with, right?
And many men can't figure it out.
Yeah.
They have to feel it.
They have to
And
feel it.
that's what we invite men into, is to feel it,
Yeah.
feel it out, feel through some of the limitations, some of those pieces that, like I said, are coming out sideways in their homes. I would say at least half of the men that come to us are recommended by their partners,
Yeah.
by their women.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because the women see it. They know firsthand what the behaviors are, what those patterns are that cause those behaviors. And it's like, men, it's time. Our women are not here to be our punching bags or to be our emotional punching bags, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's time to circle back up with men, get into connection and confrontation, whether that's physically sparring or doing deep shadow work or even taking a barefoot walk in nature.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying about the in terms of re-indigenization, it's really about coming back to our connection with the land.
Yeah.
So many of us have forgotten what that even feels like. And so when we go out for 4 days, we lose the sense of modernity. We get to come back into connection with the dirt, with the stars, with the ancestors, with the sense of not the story that we tell ourselves who we are, but who we actually are. When you strip it all away, Joe, who are you?
Yeah.
Right?
Who are you at your core?
There's an important aspect of the life journey of becoming an adult where we have to stop and take stock of who we actually are at our core, not just by the labels that we give ourselves.
100%. And what you were bringing up about nature, I started realizing I went to I feel like a lot of guys that go to Sacred Sons and maybe go to one a year, maybe once every couple of years. I went to like six or seven in a row for like a year. And what I started to realize is I'm just one of those types of personality. I find something I love and I'm going to dive deep in it. But I started to realize the only time I was in nature was when I went to these events. And I started to realize the reset on my nervous system that was coming just from being in nature. We do, we get in the river if it's cold, we're walking around barefoot, we're wrestling in the ground, right?
Yes.
We're just like reconnecting with nature. And it just like almost broke my brain where I'm like, dude, I don't ever really go outside. I sit in my little box at home. The times I'm outside is in a social interaction inside of another box. I'm not really spending any time in nature, reconnecting with like who I am, spending time away from the noise. And so that was a great reflection just to understand that mentally and emotionally, I felt so much better just from being in those atmospheres that wasn't my typical, this is where I work, this is where I live, just being confined in this small space.
Yeah.
And so that is a huge aspect, I think, and part of the healing that you guys provide, because every event is somewhere deep in nature. It is disconnected from the city.
From technology.
Yeah, from technology. You put your phone away, you're just hanging out.
And I would add to that list, no substances.
Yeah.
At Sacred Sons, we say brotherhood is the medicine.
Yeah.
Connection is secure.
Yeah.
Not getting rid of, but going away from technology, going away from some of those urges, whatever that is.
Yeah.
For each of the men who shows up, we actually have a ceremony where we ask men to give up that thing that's holding them back. And for some guys, it's ganja, it's cigarettes, it's alcohol. Some guys bring a bag. I've seen bags of gummy bears. I've seen huge bags of DMT and mushrooms brought into our spaces.
Yeah.
And we check it all at the door. And I know that it can sound like strict, but what happens is when we allow ourselves to come away from all of those attachments, that's how you find out who you really are.
100%. And I think a big realization that I noticed from going to your events is I think that a lot of people believe that they have to go on a medicine journey, or they need this to feel a certain way, or they have to eat that to reach what they're trying to do. And it's all different forms of calling drugs, right? You're trying to escape from reality, in my opinion. And so with that being said, it just made me realize that you don't need anything to heal. All you need is yourself. Yeah. And if you're willing to take the journey within, you can find the medicine that you're looking for because it's all there. But most people have so many distractions, whether it's TV, their phone, porn, right? The food, the gym. They don't take the time to actually sit with what is going on within them. And so they turn to these substances because they're like, this makes me feel better. This is how I'm going to find my healing. But the truth is you can find it on your own if you take the time to do so.
Exactly. And so a brother might be thinking, well, why don't I just go to jiu-jitsu and play my soccer game on Thursday? That's enough, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that is. But what happens when you go through the breakup, your father dies, your mother's in the hospital, and you're at jiu-jitsu and you're rolling and you feel like you have a freaking rock in your throat because you know what's going on in your life and no one else does. When we get into our spaces, that's when we dive into those areas.
Yeah.
We're going into the darkness, into the shadows, into those places where men don't often go and certainly don't allow themselves to be seen. So when you're saying like...
And they're even told not to go.
Absolutely. And they're afraid of their own... nature,
their own inner power.
Yeah. And I think it's important, like those having outlets built into our life is absolutely important. And there are some rites of passages, there are some life initiations that need to be witnessed. Otherwise, it turns into disease. Otherwise, it turns into, like I'm saying, the pieces of ourselves that end up kind of like whittling away. Is what I see. You have that sense of, you ever seen an older man who's just like whittled away?
Yeah.
Stuffed it all down.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about one of the basic core tenets of like humanity is that you need recognition. And so if you're not recognized and people don't see and they recognize you for who you are, whether,
Yes.
if you're trying to be good or whether it's bad, right? Sometimes you need recognition brought to light on the things you're doing wrong. But that moment of recognition, so what we're talking about is a lot of times when you're at a Sacred Sons event, when you're going through a process,
Yes.
or you're going through a moment where you're working through some childhood trauma or something that's coming up for you, you're asked to step in front of the group of men. So this can be anywhere from 10 to 30 men, and you're then witnessed. And you're witnessed by these men that are holding space, and at that moment, they're giving you their full presence, meaning you are the most important person in the world.
Yes.
And they are there to support you through whatever you're going through. And I think that it's this reflection that like there was a lot of things that I felt so much shame about when I stepped into that circle. I'm like, I don't know if I want to be witnessed in this. I don't know if I want other men that I look up to, people that I'm connecting with, to look at me at this moment of vulnerability. But in that moment of witnessing, you feel the love and support of all those men around you, and they just want you to work through and heal whatever you're processing. And it's this amazing healing modality just to be seen in your lowest point, but no one is judging you. No one's looking down on you. They're looking at you to let you know that we're here for you and we're witnessing you through this, and everything is going to be okay. It's a completely different experience. And to put it into words, I think I'm doing an okay job,
You're doing great.
but like, man, the feeling just knowing that, and some of these guys I met like a day before, right? These are not friends that I've known my whole life. And it makes me think, why are my guy friends not witnessing me this way? Why are they not looking at me the same way? Why am I not getting that support? It might just be that they don't know, right? Or they haven't gotten to that point. But there's just so much healing that has come just from the witnessing itself.
Yeah, and all of our leaders and facilitators have done enough of their own healing work, personal journey work, facilitation, leadership development,
Yeah.
to be able to hold those things.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not just to put it on our friends for not truly being there for us, right?
sure.
Because this is, we're pros at this.
Yeah. And like from like a deep psychological standpoint, what I want to talk about is I want to kind of just describe what you guys do through Sacred Sons, and you can tell me whether I'm on point with it or if I'm off, and please add in whatever you add. But my experience from going to so many events is that what Sacred Sons does to help men process trauma is they do different types of activities which invoke emotional responses within the body. These activities can range from childhood meditations, because for some people going back to their childhood is hard. Some activities can be tapping into your anger, because most men are told to stay docile. Yeah. There's other activities where literally most men have never been hit in the face before, never wrestled, never gotten physical with another man. And so that can be triggering for a man. So we do these activities, and then an emotional response may trigger in one of the men. And as he's going through that, that typically reflects a childhood trauma or some sort of traumatic event. But it's more important, what is that feeling? And then as they are feeling that emotion, and that can be screaming, yelling, everybody responds differently, they are asked to step in front of the group and to be witnessed as they go through it. And I know an important part of something you even coach me through is a lot of guys try to stay in the story. They don't want to actually get into the feelings. They're terrified of the feelings. And I know when I had my first process, I kept trying to go into the story, and you're like, Joe, shut up, stop using words, express it with sounds and emotions. And once I started doing that, it like ripped me open, and I understood like how it felt in my soul and what I'd been holding back all this time. And as I felt through it, a lot of times you need to feel through with the person that might have caused this emotional reaction. And for me, it was a mother wound that I had had. And so you had somebody step in as my mother, and I had a chance to talk to them, and they stepped in as my mother to go ahead and hold that space, and we processed through it. And as I felt that emotion and I let it all out, and there was crying, there was yelling, there was all this stuff, then at the end, which I think is the deepest psychological thing that you do, is you then do an event to rewrite and rewire it. Yes. And so what you made me realize through my first trauma is that I had almost like a hatred for women. I couldn't connect with them because I held this mother wound, and I was frustrated with all women because they reminded me of my mother.
I remember.
And so I needed to get past myself. Really, the reason I was having trouble with my relationships with women and my mom was I was holding this this emotion and this hatred in my own heart, and I had to get past myself. And so you had me go to the other side of the room, and you had the 8 biggest guys in the room get in between me and Jason, who was standing in as my mother, and I literally had to fight past them. And I'm not talking about joking fight. I remember I fainted. I was like wrestling these guys, so I was exhausted. But it's like it's so deep, because it's basically you're helping me to say, this is my choice. I'm making a decision to work past this, and I'm going to work as hard as I can, and I'm consciously doing this without you telling me to do it. And by working past and getting past to my mother, it was me making a choice that I'm ready to take the next step in my life. Yeah. So all this stuff is like, it's so beautiful, and it's on such a deep psychological level. And I don't know if a lot of people frame it in this reference, but this is what I've seen, and I don't know if I'm on point or I'm off point with it.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly on point. This is somatic work. We're working with energy. We're working within a physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual plane, let's just say. And it's about moving that energy in a way that's real, in a way that's creating a real experience, not through talking. There's enough of that out there, but through moving the body and through getting weird. And what you just described might sound super weird to somebody listening, like, how could Joe do that? How could you step in and actually do that?
Yeah.
And there's an entire sequence that we do to build up to that point, just to preface it. But yeah, it's simply about moving energy. And, you know, for different men, it's going to be different. Some guys, they really need that to be physically met when you're describing the wrestling or the sparring. And it's like, as men, sometimes we don't get pushed up against in a way that we can feel our own strength. Like for myself, I'm the strongest person in my household, right? So I don't get to be met in that way on the daily. But to have that as an edge to be met can evoke all kinds of things. Like you were saying, from a lack of safety to abuse, things get triggered, and we're intentionally bringing these things to the surface.
Yeah.
And the part about the rebuilding or rewiring, that's the piece that doesn't happen in the jiu-jitsu gym. It doesn't happen on the playground. And it didn't happen, you know, with whoever wounded you.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're doing this in a group, again, is because the relational aspect is necessary. And a piece from one of my mentors that I like to bring through is that we are formed in relationship, we are wounded in relationship, and we heal in relationship. And so what you just described, what you went through, was a real experience. It wasn't an idea. And we didn't actually teach you something that you could take away. You have an experience now that you can draw upon to make different choices moving forward. Yeah. We are empowering our brothers to decide, to make choices that are right for themselves, right for their families, and right for the world. Yeah. And so, I mean, whatever way that energy needs to be moved and gets to be moved, we can handle it. And we've seen it all. Yeah. And we're continuing to see it.
Yeah. You know, you guys do a great job of I know, so I took your leadership program, right? And your leadership program taught me how to help facilitate trying to help other brothers if they're going through similar situations. And I remember going through this program and just being surrounded by so many men that now that they've been healed through your men's groups and through attending, that they wanted to take this medicine back to their home, but they didn't know how to do it on their own. They needed a little bit of guidance. And so, I mean, for anybody out there that is looking for a little bit of healing, I would recommend checking out Sacred Sons, but more so if you're looking to figure out how you can help others heal, the leadership program is absolutely amazing, because you just surround yourself with all of these individuals that genuinely want to help others, that genuinely want you to heal, and they want you to be able to take this medicine back home. And I know when I first started going, right, your leadership group was a little bit smaller, but you guys just keep growing and growing and growing. And I had this reflection when I went to the last event that I went to, which was in North Carolina. So it was after about 2 years of going to events. I had been to quite a few. Yeah. And I just remembered being at the event, and I was like, okay, I just feel like I'm reopening old wounds. I've healed through a lot of this stuff, and I understand who I am now. And I'm here as an attendee, but I've gone to a point where I'm realizing I need to stop.
Good. You're coming cup full, and you're ready to be of service potentially.
Yeah, and so like that's the thing. I think at some point you go from the hurt kid to this man that's ready to help other men heal and traverse into adulthood. And like one thing that you did during that event was the entire ceremony of having these young men go from childhood, like into adulthood. And I think that's such an important part that many cultures did for centuries and centuries, right? There was always some type of ceremony signifying you're going from childhood to adulthood.
Yes.
And that, I remember I'm sitting there watching this, I'm crying because I just realized like we don't have anything like that. There's not
We're bringing it back, Joe.
Yeah, and
we're bringing back these rites of passage.
Yeah.
They're necessary.
They are, because it's like signifying to yourself that you're ready to grow up, that you're ready to make a change. And
what are the rites of passage that you had in your life? Like getting your driver's license, maybe your first drink, losing your virginity.
yeah,
Those are the rites of passage in our modern culture that are not even celebrated.
Yeah.
They're just there.
yeah,
And so, one of the things that is known is, women have a biological rite of passage. And for men, we're kind of like waiting for something.
yeah,
And really, that piece of waiting is for other men. And why men? Why do we go off together? I think this is something that is of value too. It's because of that piece that you named called shame. Because imagine that there were women in the room during your process. I don't think you would be able to get to that same place with the witness of the feminine, because a lot of the energy that you're moving in that process is coming through the feminine nature within you. And so what I observe is when we're in groups of men, I actually get to see the feminine flow, the chaos, the dancing, the freedom
yeah.
be exuded through these men for the first time maybe ever.
Yeah, it's funny they bring up the dancing. I remember it. I mean, like, I love to dance personally.
Yeah.
And I just like remembered when we're just a bunch of dudes just being silly, dancing with each other. Like I would let it rip, just dancing
Yeah.
as hard as I could because I didn't care. I'm not there trying to impress any girls, right? I'm not really trying to impress anyone. Like they're just my guy friends. We can be as weird and as goofy with each other,
Yeah.
but it's super true, right? Like I would feel shameful letting it rip that hard if there was a bunch of girls around trying to look cool to impress them. So like there's just so many benefits to just being around men, and I completely agree that you
Yeah.
just get to let loose in a way that you wouldn't naturally.
Yeah. And then to the leadership piece, I believe a real leader leads others to themselves, not to himself. And so at Sacred Sons, we have a circular leadership pathway.
Yeah.
And what that means is for brothers who are here, who are passionate and connected to this work and who have it, so to speak, we have a pathway for them to come into this work and to lead and to grow this movement, because it's not limited by the ideas of one person. Sacred Sons is more than myself. We have 4 co-founders. I want to shout out Neil Christensen, Kale Kaale Kahi, Jason McKenzie, and we have a global leadership community, Joe, that is just blasting off. Literally next month, we're sending a team out to Australia, to Kugel, Australia. We have 75 men showing up to an EMX and to Perth, Australia. We're all over Europe, all over the United States and Canada. 2025, we're coming to Africa, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya, Cairo.
Wow.
We've got big plans.
Yeah.
And the reason we can do that is because what we are doing is acknowledging the innate sense that all men have to both be a leader, to acknowledge those who came before, and to encourage those who are coming behind. And what you were talking about with the youth, we have a youth program, which is called Sons Youth. And so at that event, we had 60 youth come. Some came with their fathers, some with mentors. And we had a really amazing severance ceremony where we had the young men sever from their father or mentor for the entire weekend. They went off, they did their work. The men went off and did their work. And on that Sunday, we had the young men come back blindfolded.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this.
I do remember the whole thing. Yeah.
And these young men, they're standing across from their fathers blindfolded, not knowing that their fathers were right there.
And they're also surrounded by 400 men.
Surrounded by 400 men with drums, with shakers, with rattles, cheering these kids on.
Yeah.
And you can just feel you can see the tears in the father's eyes. The hairs on my arms are standing up. Yeah. You could really feel in that moment the pride, the love, and the respect that these fathers have for their children. And so from all that noise to come to absolute silence.
Yeah.
And then for these young men to take that blindfold off and to see their fathers again, but for their fathers to see them, not as the boy that they released 4 days ago, but as this new version, as this young man who's coming back into the tribe. And quite literally, it was one of the most profound experiences of my life to witness that.
Yeah.
As a father to sons, I look forward to having these experiences with my own children.
Yeah.
But for these young men, I also look forward to the world that they will be able to create as a result of having a rite of passage, something that we didn't have growing up, right?
Yeah.
And so Sacred Sons is here to bring those back. I imagine in my world, Sacred Sons is this global institution where all men on this planet know when you're ready to be initiated, when you have a life rite of passage that you need to overcome, the only way out is through. And if you want to go through it, you can go through it with Sacred Sons. I hope that this banner of Sacred Sons becomes that for the world. That young men know that there is a place to have those rites of passage from boyhood to manhood, and there's a place for men to heal because they didn't have it.
Yeah, and I mean, just having a place where you can go and have a mentor that knows how to properly, like, there's just so many basic things that I learned about being a man through going to Sacred Son stuff. And these were things that...
It's kind of funny to say that though, right?
Yeah, like I'm 33 years old when I started going to your guys' stuff, and you'd think that I knew a lot of this stuff, right? Like just, well, we get back to the re-indigenous basics. But my dad, when I was growing up, he always was working 16-hour days. I love him with all my heart. He's an amazing dad, but he was just never around. So I was being raised by my mom. And so my dad's dad, it's funny because his dad left him before he was born. So my dad also never had a dad. So then you have my dad who was not raised by a man. And then you have me who was basically raised by my mom. And so I didn't have this like masculine mentor that was there guiding me throughout the process. I pretty much had my mom there all the time telling me what to do, how to act, and she was acting as my dad and my mom at the same time, which was even more confusing for her. So really being in a scenario where we're just taught the basics and understanding how to relate to other men is such a powerful tool, and something that just having the space just to know that it's okay to express your emotions or to be a certain way. But like for me, when I was growing up, I was always told you have to act a certain way, stop doing that, don't be like that, kind of ignore your intuition because it didn't go according to the plan that my parents had for me. And so I was kind of disconnected with nature, disconnected with my own intuition, and disconnected from my emotions. And honestly, like I relate.
And how did that come out in your behavior? That's the part that's really coming to the surface at this time. We're seeing these young men act out in such violent ways. Yeah. I mean, this stuff is no joke.
Yeah, it's very serious.
You know what I mean? Like we are seeing young men right now. In my time, it's like heroin, cocaine, all those things. Yeah. No, man, these kids are dying on fentanyl from one time taking it. Yeah. There are young men and others going into schools and absolutely wreaking havoc because of the lack of structure, because of the lack of order. And shout out to all the moms who are doing their best. Yeah. Because that's all they have. Yeah. And you know, I had a mother reach out to me recently from our youth program, and one of her questions was like, why do men leave? And it's exactly what you said. Their fathers left. So by the time they get there, they figure, hey, my dad was gone. I might as well not stay around either. Yeah. And so it's our responsibility as men, if you so choose, to be present. Yeah. As simple as it is, just being there is oftentimes enough. And then there's another piece too that I like to say, because there's also guys who had the great dad that came to every game, that was at every birthday, you know, whatever that story is, and they're still missing masculine mentorship. Yeah. Because sometimes I think it's a human need. We need someone to see us for who we are now and not who we were, you know, at different iterations of our life. Yeah. You know, and so for me, I don't have those judgments for you in that scenario because I'm experiencing you in the now. Yeah. I don't have to attach any judgments to stories about who you were because all I'm interested in is in this moment. And sometimes our fathers, our mothers, they can't be that. Yeah. I know for my children, I'm going to have to send them off. I tell Uncle Kale, you know, when my boys are of age, I'm going to send them to Maui for a summer and put them to work. Yeah. Because that's the type of initiation that men really need to harness this energy. Masculine energy is powerful. Yeah. It is penetrating. It's a creative force. Look around. If you're listening to this, if you're watching this, look around. Men built this. Yeah. Straight up. Women birthed this earth and men built it. And so it's a both and. We need each other. And so for men to come into alignment with themselves and with each other is so beneficial for the world. And this is the way. It's very simple. It is in those getting connected to nature and each other, but with that simplicity, I believe comes massive change for the culture.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's the balance between both sides and not understanding that you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
But it's important for you to be able to tap into both sides of it too. You know, bringing back to what you said, like what were the repercussions, right? In many senses, I went very much into my feminine side of things,
Yeah.
and I almost relate to women better than I do with men a lot because I was always hanging out with the feminine, and so I got pushed that side. And so it took a big understanding of dropping in and figuring out what was the reason why I was acting like this, what were the causes, and how was it showing up in my life.
Yeah.
And then once I was able to kind of like take a step outward, I could then work on each part of my personality that I felt like I needed to work through. And so it took going to multiple events to really work through multiple things, and also understanding that everybody's journey is different. Some people, you know, they need to go to maybe one event and they're good to go. Others feel like they need to go to however many they need to. And so understanding that, one thing I realized too is even though we all have our different stories. We're all raised differently. We all have our own unique experience, but you start to realize certain patterns within the way that people suffer, right? And you start to see that there's certain ways to also help specific types of traumas to heal.
Yes.
And so once you start realizing those patterns, I know that from going to so many events for me, I now, when I talk to somebody, in the first like couple minutes of talking to them and seeing maybe how they treat others or how they act in specific ways, or if they're rude or if they're kind, just little things, I'm like, I have a feeling this person was probably traumatized in this way.
Yeah.
This person
You can have
probably
a sense of their wounding.
Yep, exactly. And once you understand their wounding, it also allows me to talk to them and speak to them in a way that, because I've seen so many guys going through this healing, that I feel that this is the type of way that they need to either be coddled, or maybe they need a man to stand up to them and make them step up to the plate too, but just understanding that. And I think that only comes through experience. And that's something that I always respected so much about the Sacred Sons leaders, is you guys just always intuitively knew what type of healing this man needed, and you guys were able to bring that medicine to them for their specific situation. It's something that, same thing, it's just you put in your 10,000 hours, and the more you do something, the more you realize. And so I had the huge benefit of going to so many events and just seeing so many men go through it.
And you saw different facilitators.
Yep.
It wasn't just me, right?
No.
You saw Kale, you saw Jay, you saw how other men, you know, would take them through their process.
Yep.
And the real secret sauce there is that it's not about the stories that we're carrying.
Yeah.
It's about the emotions. So
Yeah.
one of my hesitations when I was early in the work, my path, you know, I came through the Red Road, through sitting in Sweat Lodge, like I was mentioning, to sitting in ayahuasca ceremonies. And we should talk more about how this work is perfect integration for plant medicine work.
Yeah.
Because they are aligned.
Yeah.
But in my facilitation, I always had this hesitation around sexual trauma because I don't have that story.
Yeah.
And so like, God, how can I help this guy
Yeah.
when I don't have that story?
Yeah.
How could I possibly give him any semblance of like hope, right? And it's not that we're connecting to the story, we're connecting to emotions.
Yeah.
As human beings, we all have the same set of emotions.
Yeah.
And so when we are tracking, which is what we're doing on those weekends, when we're tracking men, we're tracking their emotional waves and those emotional patterns, and that's what we're servicing.
Yeah.
Not the story, but the emotion.
No, 100%. And a big thing that I was noticing when I was, same thing, I got scared of certain people's experiences. You know, we can use the word trauma because some people's experiences felt that they're way worse than other people's.
Yes.
But then I read a book called How to Do the Work by Nicola Purr. Have you read it?
Yes, I have it on my bookshelf at home.
Okay, cool. So she talks about how it doesn't matter. You can't rank traumas because
No.
someone who was yelled at by their mother, when you look at the psychological brain effect that happened to that child, it's the same as PTSD from war, whether they were raped or whether they were yelled at by their mother. It matters about how they felt it to themselves. And so it was a big issue for me because I would be like, I don't feel worthy to even share my story compared to this person who was raped.
Yes.
Right? I'm like, I'm just going to shut up. I have no right stepping into this circle. I need to leave the space for the people who've been through real shit. And I just felt like shame once again for even being able to go in there and express myself.
Yeah, for even feeling bad about the breakup or the thing that now seems small after I heard this guy's story. We have to actually make a point on the weekends. Like, no matter what happens, like what you're carrying, what you're bringing to the circle matters.
Yeah.
And it has a place here.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point. It's like, no one's trauma is greater or worse than. And you can see in society, there's been so many people who have made incredible lives for themselves who come from massive trauma.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of the people we look up to as celebrities or entertainers or musicians.
Yeah.
A lot of the reason why that artwork was born through them is because of the trauma.
Yeah, I was
Right.
literally having a conversation with somebody yesterday about this, where I was saying, if you want to see a successful person, you have to give them the right amount of trauma. If they didn't have enough trauma, they're probably not going to be strong. They're probably not going to be tough. It's not saying that it can't happen, but typically you'll find that the most successful people had just the right amount of trauma, and they turned that into a superpower, or it's motivating them, right?
Yes.
And it can motivate them in a negative way, where it's stressing them the fuck out. It's making them be like, I got to do this, I got to do this. Or it can turn into a superpower in a positive, where it's like, I want to do this because this was done to me, and I want to help heal the world in this other way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just the right amount of trauma will actually create somebody who's probably stronger and is willing to resist things more than someone else.
Yeah. I'm more the latter. You know, I feel so blessed in this life that it's my responsibility to be of service and to give back in areas that, you know, I have my own story. You know, I grew up, my parents were separated before I was even one.
Yeah.
So I have a similar story to you in growing up with well, it's different, but in growing up with a single mom and
Yeah.
watching how painful that was for her.
Yeah.
And
Dude, I have so much respect for single mothers.
oh my gosh.
They're literally the best, and like employees too. I know single mothers are the best employees on the planet. They're responsible. They always get things done. They have to support their family.
But that's a misalignment within our society.
Yeah.
Because the nuclear family model is broken. It's not working.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, just look around at what's happening, but that sense that's causing men to leave. And I guess what I really mean by that is it takes a village.
Yeah.
It shouldn't all be on the mom to be the boss, to be the mom, to be the dad and the coach and all of those things. It's not that it's unfair. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
And to have a masculine figure present, whether that's the parental father, you know, the birth father, or that's an uncle, or any type of friend within that village that can hold masculine energy for the entire village. It's absolutely necessary and vital to us as humans.
No, and I agree with you entirely. I was at Fit for Service, and Matthias DeStefano was speaking.
Yes.
And Matthias was talking about how we used to be more connected to the earth, right? We used to be in flow with the sun and the moon because it literally has a polar effect on our body due to the fact that we're made out of water, right? And so when the moon is closer, and so women used to have cycles that were all on the same timing, and so they would have children together, and they would be literally raising their kids together, but they would be a village working together to support. And it's not just supposed to be one parent, one dad, and it used to be uncles, brothers, right?
Yeah.
And everybody comes together to raise these kids, and then they have not just one person to look up to, but they have multiple figures that are there to support them. And so, I mean, I come from a big Middle Eastern family, so I know what it's like to have a family where I can reach out to my uncles, I can have people that support me, and I know that for me, when I have kids, I want to have a big family too, because I knew what it was like to grow up in an atmosphere where I had my cousins to play with, I had my uncles, my aunts, and everybody was super close. Like my grandma lived with us for many years growing up, my aunt lived with us for many years, and it's just like, you know, your family, and there's nothing more important than family, in my opinion. And
Agreed.
so, you know, there's just so many lessons to learn from supporting each other in that way.
Yeah, in American culture, it's like, get out of the door as fast as you can at 18. You're a loser if you don't.
Yeah.
You know that energy that we grew up
100%.
with? It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why the urge to rush away? And it's not that everybody wants to be close to their family. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But there is something inherently lost when we feel isolated because we don't know who to call.
Yeah.
Because we don't have somebody to pick up the phone and like ask that really hard question.
Yeah.
Or even simply just to be honest about where we're at.
Yeah.
Like the lack of that, the isolation is the sickness that we are proposing, that brotherhood is the medicine to serving.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying it's broken is because I see so many men who are born from this nuclear model and they're lost.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we live in a cultureless culture, and you're
Yeah,
absolutely correct
that's
that
it.
we're taught as children, get out of the house as quickly as possible. And I mean, if you love your family and you get along with your family, why not spend as much time with them as possible, right? I can understand if you're in a broken home and you need to escape. That's a different story entirely. But also, I think a lot of the wounds that we have in the world start at the family level, right? So work on healing those wounds, and then you can heal everything else in your life. And like, I know when I had my first, when I did ayahuasca, the main message that I got from it was simply, I kept talking about how, like, in my mind, I wanted to help others and do something and be a positive impact. And literally the very clear message was, you can't help anyone until you help your family.
Yeah.
Stop there. And just like, I kept trying to go other directions, and it's like, nope, you have all these problems at home with your parents, with your sister, with your brother. Until this is healed, you can do nothing else. And what I'll say is, I will say probably like literally within the last couple of weeks, I feel like I've now healed my brother, I've healed with my sister, I've healed with my mom, and I've healed with my dad. And everything in my life is flourishing like 10 times more than it was before. And also knowing that through that journey, like a lot of times, sometimes you're waiting for the other person to heal. Don't wait for them. Heal yourself. And as you heal yourself more and more, it will have this infectious like result on the person that you're trying to have this relationship with. And just over time, they'll see your changes and they'll want to change. And it will literally infect others with how you're changing yourself. And yeah, I mean, the medicine was absolutely correct. I've healed my family, and that's really healed me. And that was the most important part of my journey so far.
Yeah. When I first sat with medicine, I was in the desert of Joshua Tree, and the medicine was like, you're going to bring hundreds of men here. And I was like, what the fuck is this about?
Yeah.
Like, how? Why?
Yeah.
Me? No. And little by little it happened. I could tell you about how that happened, but I have a story that's relevant about what you're saying, because my brother has 5 kids. I have 4 kids. My brother has 5 kids. So we're doing our things. He lives in Ohio. I live in California. I'm like, Jesse, I created this amazing thing, Sacred Sons. You got to come. I want you to experience it. I know how much you're going to benefit from it. And he's just like, I can't. Like, I got all this stuff to do, man. And so there was like a solid year. I'm trying to get my brother to come to this thing that I created. Because in a subtle way, I kind of created it out of our brotherhood that was real for us, right?
Yeah.
I'm always talking about brotherhood. I have an older brother who actually taught me a lot about what it means to be a brother. And so one day he just said to me, he's like, Adam, he's like, let's just get our families together. Like, I don't need to come to an event. And so what happened out of that was like, I'm like, oh yeah, because that's where it actually is for us. We have kids now. Our kids need to be together. So we've created an annual trip where we get our families together. Both my mom and my dad, who've been divorced for 30 years, they come. All our partners, and we get together every year now, have our own convergence.
Right.
And so that was the messaging for me when I was a little bit in my ego of like, look at me and what I've done, and I want you to see this. It was like, no, why don't I just actually be about it and bring our families together and have our kids play together. And that's, we're on our 3rd year of doing that. And it's just so much, it's so meaningful to bring the work home.
I really resonate with that. And that's something I was struggling with recently. I had to call Nate Collerman and have a conversation with him, because I feel that a lot of my guy friends would really benefit from going to Sacred Sons.
Yeah.
But it's also like understanding, I believe the only reason that this had such a deep impact on me is I did not get told to go to this.
Exactly.
I went to it walking towards it like, what is this? I don't know what this is, but it feels like I need this. And a lot of my guy friends come to me and they talk about the same problems, the same stuff over and over again. And I'm like, hey, like, I think you should go check this out. I will even pay for you to go. Like, just put a little bit in so I know you're part of it. But like, at the same time, like, I just like, I can only repeat myself so many times, if that makes sense, because they keep dealing with the same things and they're not going. And then they say, I'm going to go later. I'm going to do this. And it like honestly disheartens me. And I'm just like, I don't know if I want to stay friends with somebody that's like, I'm giving them a solution, but at the same time, they're not taking the solution. It's like they want to stay. I understand why the psychology behind it. People like staying in their trauma. They're literally addicted to their cortisol.
Yeah.
They're addicted to the
because
stress
who am I
hormones.
without it?
Exactly.
If I let go of this thing that I've been like building my entire identity on for the entirety of my adult life, who am I without it?
Yeah.
That's a scary proposition for some.
Dude, it was so when I went to India and I did the 10-day silent meditation retreat, my brother had me do a practice when I was there where he literally had me write a list of all the people that had ever hurt me and all the people that I'd ever hurt.
Yeah.
This list took me the whole 10 days to write. It was 8 pages front and back. I'd
Wow.
like basically relived most of the traumas from my life, like understanding like the people that had really hurt me, but understanding that we were all just hurt people hurting people. And I wasn't angry or mad at anyone. I just felt so much sorrow for who I was, who they were, and understanding that we were so hurt, we were just hurting each other. Yeah. And what you brought up about who am I going to be if I get rid of these stories, my brother had me take the list to the Sacred Duny Fire, which is a fire that runs 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and he wanted me to burn it. And I'm standing there with this list, and I realized when I got there, I don't want to burn it.
I'm attached to this.
Yeah, I'm attached to this. This is all my victim stories. This is who I am as a person. What the fuck am I going to do now if I can't cling to these stories and say, this is why I act like this? And I literally stood there for like 30 minutes. I finally like broke my silence. My brother's on my phone. He's like, you got to let it go. I'm like, dude, you don't understand. I literally feel the weight. Yeah, I like, because I was silent for 10 days.
Right.
And so like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I can let this go. And then finally, I just like feel this gentle nudge, just like, divine intervention, just you got to let this go, dude. I let it go and just poof. And just like, I literally feel this weight of like my entire life just like flew off of me because I made a conscious decision to say, I am done with this and I'm ready to move on to the next stage of my life. And I just like started crying and just letting all these emotions out. And the reason that I know that I am past it is because now I've thought about those things. When I was thinking about them, I was getting sweaty, I was shaking, I had anxiety. And now when I think about all those things and all those people, I don't emotionally get triggered at all because I said, I am done with this. It's time to let go.
Yeah, what I've witnessed in you since I've known you is just how much you've been flourishing with that letting go. It's, there's a teaching, whenever we let go of something, we have to replace it. And so what I see you replacing some of those old traumas and stories with are new relationships, community, connection, even some peak experiences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like having some peak experiences in there is very nice.
Yeah.
But it's really about building those new relationships and in the next level communities. I don't know if you get this sense either from Sacred Sons or from Fit for Service, but when we're a part of a community, something bigger than ourselves, there's this sense that like everything is possible again.
Everything
Remember
is
when you're
possible.
a kid and you feel like everything is possible?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of us lose that. Now we're confined to a degree or to the job or to the cubicle.
Yeah.
And when we become a part of a integrated community, we get to be like, oh, there's more for me and I have so much more support. Yeah. And I think that sense is something super valuable to have in this life. And not a lot of people have that. They're giving it to a sports team or to a logo or to something that they're not literally actually connected to.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
I completely agree with you. And it's this sense of you can have anything in the universe if you want it for a good intention and you're doing it for a good purpose, right? And that feeling is something that I definitely lost from like childhood, right? Like when you're a kid, I want to be an astronaut, right? You want to be whatever you want, but as you get older, you get more responsibilities, get more people.
Limiting beliefs get pushed on you.
You will not do this. You will not. But then like as I now have worked through a lot of this, I'm like, anything is freaking possible. I can do whatever the hell I want. If I want it bad enough, I will figure out a way to do it. There's no problem. There's only solutions. It's up to you. You can see that's a problem or you can see it's a solution. And even what you were bringing up before is like, all those limiting beliefs and stories that I was telling myself, right? Like a simple one is like my parents forced me into becoming a lawyer. They said, you have to do this and that. And so that was crushing me. And then one of my spiritual coaches was like, why don't you look at it this way?
Exactly.
Your parents guided you into being an attorney. It turned out great for you. You're amazing at it and you make a shit ton of money. Like all these things are good for you. Yes. And the moment I shifted it in my head, it just felt from a burden to like lifting me up. And it's just all about how you frame it in your mind.
Yes.
And so much of this stuff is like what I was talking about with the previous guest is like your story and your traumas can crush you or it can lift you. It's up to you. It can be your weakness or your superpower. It's your choice at the end of the day. And literally how you frame it in your own mind is the difference between how it feels in your body. So it's up to you to make the decision.
Perception creates reality.
Yeah.
Like how do you perceive the person you are? How do you perceive the things that are happening? Yeah, I think that's That's it, man. And what that is called is flipping the script.
Yeah.
You know, you
That's
got
good.
the script. You're just like, man, let me just tweak this really quick, right? And make this my operating system. Look at it not from a place of fear or lack, but from a place of love.
Yeah.
Once we get on that love operating system, it's almost like the sidewalk lights up when you walk down the street. Do you ever get that
100%.
feeling where you're just like, wow, like I'm internally aligned, all these things, these opportunities, I see you're doing these $1 million, multi-million dollar cases.
Yeah.
It's like these things are landing. It's working. It's because this life is an inside out game.
Yeah.
So many of us walking around thinking like the world's against us. Everything's going to beat us down. But it's truly from that inner alignment that we create the life that we wish to see for ourselves.
Dude, 100%. I mean, like the other day I was downward spiraling just into a bit of depression because I know what it feels like, and I was going through some shit. And I just like, I'm so happy that I'm in a point in my life where I have the tools. At the moment I recognize it, I see it, I know, let's just take a deep breath. Let's get to the present moment. Let's actually realize that this moment is perfect. There's nothing actually wrong. No one's holding a gun to my head. And like able to take myself out of it that quickly, where years ago I would have just kept focusing on the negative, going downward spiral, only seeing things and like just like clouding my mind, and then not being able to like really see the positive. And I was doing a Joe Dispenza workshop 2 weekends ago, and they did this activity. They literally had us watch this girl doing a race. Okay, so she's doing this race and she's racing 4 other chicks. She falls and she drops way behind, and then she comes back and beats them all for like the world championship.
I saw that. Seen that video.
And so then they literally, after that video, they had us journal. I want you to think about a problem that you had in your life that you weren't able to come to a solution. And just when I was inspired and I felt good, how I started thinking of all these solutions and ways out of it. And just like the way you feel literally will affect everything in your life. And if you're coming from a place of negativity, you know, lack of abundance, and you're not thinking about positive things and you're not inspiring yourself, you're not going to find the solutions that you need, and you're going to stay in that downward spiral. So understanding the psychology of like how my brain works has just like allowed me to take control of my life. And I recommend for anybody struggling, like, you know, go read some books, go listen to some podcasts. Like the information is out there, and it's up to you to figure out how you work so that you can then control your own life.
Yeah. And if you need that kickstart, if you need that pep talk, if you need someone else to like literally hold you through it, that's what these communities are for.
100%.
And I think there's so much shame that's built into our culture. And when I'm in these spaces, I don't feel any of that.
Yeah.
I don't feel any of that. I feel the beauty of what it means to be human. I feel the gratitude to have this life. I feel into gratitude for all of those people, whether they hurt me or they love me. Yeah. It's like I feel the gratitude for all of it when I'm at that high vibration.
Yeah. Well, dude, like another thing that I try to explain to people is when I go to a Sacred Sons event or like a Fit for Service event, like you brought up shame, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are scared of sharing their stories because they're worried about people judging them.
Yeah.
And it was the weirdest feeling. I remember just being at these events. Every guy there is on their healing journey, and like they want to hold space for you, and they literally get excited as you're processing your shit. You're like crying, you're like breaking down your soul, and they're like so happy for you. They're like, yes, please let it out, keep going. But it's like, I know this sounds like super cheesy and stuff, but like it's an emotion and a feeling that is really hard to express unless you're there in it. Because I do have friends that care about me, and I do have friends that love me, but the presence I would get at these communities is not presence that I get in everyday life, meaning somebody is looking me in the eyes. They're genuinely caring about what I have to say. Their phone is away. We're connected to the earth. We're there literally to work on ourselves, improve ourselves, and process trauma, and they're happy to help. And it doesn't feel like you're burdening them. It doesn't feel like you're making their life suck. It doesn't feel like you're going to owe them something after. They are there because they're just happy to help you, and you're happy to help them. It's a wild feeling, and putting that into words sometimes doesn't come across perfectly.
Yeah. I think something that just came up for me that I want to speak on is some people feel maybe that they're not worthy of it, or maybe it's not accessible to them.
Yeah.
And at Sacred Sons, we have a robust scholarship program where 1 in 5 men at every training, at every event is scholarshiped. So I just like to put that out there. Like there's actually no barrier to entry if this is something that you desire. Other organizations have their own ways of doing that, but I think it's important to to note that I believe and we believe that like all humans are worthy of this.
Yeah.
Truly. All humans are worthy of having that collective witness, of having an opportunity to heal.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a misconception that in other communities, and you know, there's projections out there.
Yeah.
It's like it's only for this type of person, or you have to have gone to Burning Man and done these things to fit in.
Yeah.
At Sacred Sons, we are a truly diverse community. So diverse, in fact, that we have men in our community who are on opposite sides of global conflicts that are happening right now.
Yeah.
And when I was talking about being a global brotherhood, I'm not talking about it from the perspective of a business. I'm talking about we're an actual brotherhood who believes in love that is crossing borders.
Yeah.
And so we're in year 6 of Sacred Sons. What does year 100 look like?
Yeah.
What does it look like 1,000 years from now when men have the possibility and the access to heal themselves? I think it creates a world that I want to bring more children into. You know, like I think that's what it is.
You're not wrong. I think a lot of people don't want to bring children because they're scared of where the world is going to go.
Big time.
Yeah, it's a big unknown. I mean, it's terrifying. You know, there's so much scary stuff out there, but there's also so much positive, right? It's just about how you look at it a lot of time. And I think raising your kids the right way, teaching them what to look for, what to be scared of, right? It's like when people ask me, you know, when you travel by yourself, is it scary? I'm like, well, I don't go down the scary hallways, you know what I mean, or the scary alleyways. I stay in the places that are safer. And it's all because I was educated properly to be wise, watch out for myself. But of course, if you do stupid things, you'll probably get into stupid trouble. So it's like it starts with the education and creating a world where your children can feel safe.
Yeah. I don't think you can avoid injury. We can't nerf the world. You're probably going to have to get into some stupid trouble at some point.
Yeah, I think it's also good for people too.
Let's just make sure that stupid trouble stays innocent and kind of stays in its place, so that when we are adults out here making decisions that impact many other people, that's not when the stupid behaviors like come out.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, Jordan Peterson says that it's not about not doing dangerous things. It's about doing the most dangerous things as safely as possible.
Yeah.
Because that's where the growth is. If you stay in line and you don't do anything that is outside your bounds or anything that is difficult or anything that pushes you, you're never going to grow.
Yeah.
And so it's important to do the dangerous things, but just to do them as safely as possible.
And, everyone says it's important to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We put these brothers through a lot of uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
And that's what brings those deep shadows to the surface, and we keep those shadows out front for our entire time together. It's literally doing the opposite of what's happening out here when everything is in the shadows and no one's being real with each other, and we got a bunch of small talk happening. So
yeah, that's funny. My hashtag for the podcast is no small talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's real, man. A lot of times I find myself like people, when I'm like at parties or social events, they'll walk away from me because I'm a bit intense for them, because I don't really care about talking about nothing for the next 2 hours. Like, I mean, my time is very intentional. My energy is very intentional. And I feel like I'm just looking for like individuals who can teach me as much as I feel like I'm teaching them, right? Not to say that in a cocky way. It's just like, I think in this life, I feel like I'm a philosopher. I'm just in the constant pursuit of knowledge. Philosopher means philosophe, the love of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing that makes me the happiest. So when I meet a friend, when I meet someone new, I'm like, what can you teach me? What can I teach you? How can we help each other grow? How can you fill my soul? Because I will charge your battery, will you charge mine? And just that's how I've gone through life. And I've noticed that certain people literally avoid me now at parties because I exhaust them. Because I intuitively, like, you know how Walton always, like, he will ask a question, he doesn't know where that question comes from, and he'd be like, well, what about this or what about that? And that's how I feel like I am with people now. And I might talk about something which I didn't even know is what they actually needed to discuss, but I hit it right on the nose.
Right.
And so I'm triggering for individuals. And so I definitely have noticed some people are avoiding me more than others.
Yeah. I think that can be an edge for people to go so deep so quickly. My defining characteristic is I'm actually a curious person.
Yeah.
I really want to know. I'm a Cancer sun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have a depth of empathy to me that is just authentic. I actually care.
Yeah.
Something I noticed within the leaders of Sacred Sons. I'm like, dang, they actually care.
Yeah.
That's something worth noting in this world. I feel like caring comes off as soft in many ways, But to actually care about other people, there's nothing, I don't think, more altruistic. You know what I'm saying? And I think I think it comes natural to us when we allow the guard to come down.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I agree with you on the curiosity thing. That's probably a huge factor in my success in life, is just being naturally curious about everything. And I really am a true believer there's no stupid question. If you don't know, you don't know. Ask the question, find out, right? If you never ask, you're never going to know. And so I think there's just so much out there. There's so many topics to learn. There's so many things that you could be passionate about or learn about. But if you don't ask about it and you don't dive down that road, how are you going to know that it inspires you?
Yeah.
How are you going to know if you like it? And also, your brain is different than everyone else's brain. Just because the teacher explained it that way, it doesn't mean that it made sense to you.
Yeah.
And that's something that you need to understand, that we are a combination of all of our experiences. And your experience is completely different than the person sitting next to you. And if you need things explained in a different way, ask. And if they're a good person, they're a good teacher, and they're somebody who's willing to actually take the time, it's important that everybody understands, not just one person.
Yeah. We do a process called Sacred Mirrors that you've been a part of several times, and we ask the questions. As facilitators, you're standing eye to eye gazing for an uncomfortable amount of time.
Yeah.
And we're asking questions like, what mask do you want to remove? Who are you out in the outside world? Can you remove this mask with the witness of another person?
Yeah.
And then we ask people, what do you not want the man standing across from you to know about you? Like, imagine somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what do you not want me to know about you?
Yeah. It's very real.
That's very real. And when we get to those spaces by removing these layers, we all have these layers of resistance, resistance to the work.
Yeah.
But what that resistance actually is resistance to our potential. And you brought up Kevin Walton, so it's like, we can go into creatorhood, but I think it's important for us all to acknowledge like that we're more than the stories, we're more than the trauma. And when we can peel those layers back, we get closer and closer to that essence of who we truly are. And when we can access that, it's such a gift. I wanted to ask you, because here's the thing, and you've done a lot of healing work, but as you go into the future, chapters of your life, as you start a family, new things are going to come up.
Yeah.
New memories are going to surface. And so moving through that mother wound, moving through that trauma, where are you at relationally? Do you have a vision for where you're going for this next chapter?
I think that for me, I have a lot of things going on right now. And I have a lot of what's the saying, fires in the iron. But
yes.
More importantly, not mattering all the things I'm working on, I just feel like for the first time in my life, I'm completely in line with my intuition. And for me, I feel that my intuition is having faith, and I think God is faith and faith is God. So I'm just kind of following my intuition right now. And if it feels right, I know it is right. And I'm just going down those roads, right? If I feel a string that I need to tug on, I keep tugging on it. If it feels uncomfortable, I'll shift directions. So for me right now, I'm pretty freaking happy. God has blessed me in a million different ways. I have everything I need. I have the friends. I have the family. And I know that part of my journey right now is just helping others, whether it's, feeling that I need to go on this trip because maybe on this trip I need to sit with somebody and have a conversation that's going to change their life. Or maybe I need to go to this networking event because me leading it and showing others and inspiring them is going to be what needs to be said. Or right now, for podcast guests, I'm not really reaching out to people. People are now reaching out to me, and me just understanding that is the exact conversation I need to have, because there is something there for, even if one person is going to listen to it, it's going to be beneficial for them. So right now, I'm just going through the flow. I have some personal goals that I want to achieve financially, but those are for me, and it's more because I've noticed that the more money I make, the more I can share it with others. And also, my relationship with money is it flows like water. The more I let go of it, the more it comes back in a wave to me. Yeah. And the more I hold on to it, everything in my life suffers. And that's just like energy in life. It's understanding that it's the ups and the downs. When you have some of your greatest highs, just know everything that goes up must come down. So brace yourself for the down and don't freak out about it. Just know this is how energy works and this is how the universe works. Yeah. So right now, I just know that I love my podcast. I love my business. I love traveling. I know I love art history. And I just love these things. I'm going to keep doing these things because they're what make me feel good. And if anybody has anything to say about it, then that's a reflection of their own perspective and they need to work on themselves.
Yeah.
But I'm just enjoying life and I'm really loving my journey right
Gosh,
now.
how good does it feel to just love life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Took a hot minute
A
to
lot
get
of people
here.
out there are not loving their life, bro.
No, for sure. I mean, I hated myself. That's how I got on the journey to Sacred Sons. I literally hated myself, like
Yeah.
deep rooted in my core.
So how would you invite in? I know you wanted to invite in some of your specific friends.
Yeah.
But how would you broadly invite in maybe a brother who's listening to this conversation? Maybe he's sitting there hating himself right now.
What I would say is if you want to talk to me, I'm here for you. But more importantly, just feel into your heart because maybe you've ignored that for most of your life. Maybe you need to talk to a therapist. Maybe you need to break up with the person you're in a relationship with. Maybe you need to go disappear for a hot minute and go spend some time alone and figure out who you are, right? If you're willing to take some time, maybe go to nature, sit with God, have a conversation and be like, hey, what do I need right now? And actually just sitting with yourself, because I believe that all the answers you're looking for are inside if you're just willing to listen. So just sit down and listen, and you'll know what the right thing to do is. But I think that for me, it also took a long time to get to the point where I could trust my intuition. I'd been so disconnected with myself and my soul for most of my life that it took me a full year of, like, I went for 7 months, traveled the world by myself. Probably month 5 is when I finally started trusting my intuition and being like, this is the right thing to do. I know I'm on the right path. And it happened when I started noticing synchronicities. Oh, I'm showing up at the exact time. Oh, this person just showed up with exactly what I needed at this moment.
Yes.
And that's when I think you'll start to notice that you are finally getting in line with your intuition, is synchronicities will start happening all the time. And so it took a while to get there. And I think for anyone who's listening, just follow your heart, follow your gut. It will always lead you in the right direction. If you think it's trying to trick you, you know what's right or wrong. There's not a question. You know what's going on down in your core.
Yeah. I was saying that leadership is so good for personal development, but travel. In my life, I played in a band for 10 years, a metal band touring the world, and like traveling, being a part of new cultures, tasting new foods, being in different ecosystems, like you really get to find out who you are out there. And then in the relationships and like you said, those people who show up as a reflection for who you are, where you are, and being able to get a sense from that place of ourselves. I think that is invaluable.
Yeah. Peter Crone says that every relationship you have in your life is there to teach you where you are not free. And so I think a lot of people that seclude themselves are trying to hide from the world because they don't want to be shown where they're not free.
Yeah.
So they avoid social interactions, they avoid connecting with others because it's just completely reflecting to them what they need to work on. And so for someone that I consider myself one of the most highly social people I know, I am constantly reflected all the little ways which I still need to improve because somebody will be like, oh, well, you didn't do that or you didn't do this. And I definitely have noticed the more I go down my healing journey, I feel that, and it might be just be my own projection, but I feel that I'm being held to a higher standard and I keep getting things in my past that I did incorrectly brought back to the forefront so that I can work on them now. But it's also, I stressed about this in the beginning, but then I realized, dude, this is just an opportunity for you to heal a wound that you've not healed. And obviously this person is hurt by you. You should probably heal this because it's going to be good for you and good for them. Don't be angry about it. You were an unconscious, unaware individual who was just trying to survive back then. And the fact that you made it this far is a goddamn miracle. So just take this as an opportunity because they're showing you where you're not free.
Yeah. The way I'd like to think of that is remember that you prayed for this.
Yeah.
Remember that you asked for this. And on the red road, it's called the medicine wheel.
Yeah.
I call it templates for ascension. We go through something that's very challenging and maybe we showed up our best and maybe we didn't. We continue on that ascension path and then that opportunity comes around again, but it's in another form. Maybe it's in the form of another person even or another situation. And remember that you prayed for the opportunity to meet this situation once again from this new space of embodiment because we know that we get an opportunity to do it better. We get an opportunity to live again today.
Yeah.
You saw the sunrise.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. This reminds me of a moment that I had at Sacred Sons leadership training where you asked for this. I remember there was a moment I'd hit an all-time mental low, was having very dark suicidal thoughts just after a process that I had. And I just was like, fuck Sacred Sons, screw you guys. I don't know who I am anymore. How did I get to this point in my life? Like, what is going on? And then like, took this whole, like, just literally talking to myself out loud and like having to process through it by myself. And like, this was a moment that it was not something that needed to be witnessed. I needed to go through it. And then after everything, I just realized like, dude, all this stuff is stuff I asked for.
Right.
Nobody made me do this. No one forced me to be here. I came here on my own will. And just because I don't like what I'm seeing is no one's fault but my own. Yeah. And so I was trying to project all my issues and the problems. And, you know, at that time I just broken up with my girlfriend of like 7 years. I'm like, this is just because of I'm projecting everybody else's fault except for every decision in my life is because I made it. Mm-hmm. And it took me having to literally go in a downward spiral and being angry at everyone and everything in my life to sit there for a moment and be like, all right, so I'm the reason I'm here, and I have an option. I almost Ubered out of the event and went home in the middle. I was in Oracle, Arizona at leadership training, and I literally almost left in the middle of the event. I'm like, I can go home, go back to all my old habits, go back to my ignorance is bliss, just give it up, go back to my old habits of partying all the time, not caring about myself and just like living in this state. Or I can go back, I can choose to be happy, and I can confront what I just went through. Yeah. And it took quite a while, a lot of journaling, and I finally went back out. And I think that was probably the biggest turning point for me in my journey of like healing through a lot of those childhood traumas. But I definitely understand, like, I asked for this.
Gosh, listen, I'm in it. I just told you our daughter was born 3 weeks ago. So we're creating a postpartum environment where Hannah and the baby can just rest, and I'm with all three of my boys.
Yeah.
And my boys are wild, and it's chaotic, and they go to 3 different little schools right now, so I'm dropping them off and picking them up. And there's hard moments, and in those hard moments, I'm like, yeah, but I prayed for this. You know, I prayed to be a father. I prayed to be around.
Yeah.
I prayed to be here for this very moment.
Yeah.
When that tantrum or that laughter, you know, it's not all bad. It's actually quite amazing. Yeah. But in those hard moments when it's like, poor me, that's actually the invitation to go, wait a second, I asked for this.
Yeah.
Let me see how much capacity I have to show up now.
Yeah.
And operate from that place, because it's really, I think if we take a look at it, it's really beneficial for us to see ourselves as creators of our life.
Yeah.
Versus victims of it or anything like that. It's important that we take ownership of our decisions and our choices. Yeah. And we get the reflections from our brothers as we move through this life. And that, man, I mean, that's a big prayer for me, is just like, there's so many men being lost every single day. Yeah. So many veterans taking their own lives. Yeah. And right now it's impacting the youth. Yeah. And, you know, suicide rates in men are 4 times that of women.
Yeah. And just to continue on this thread, I think a really important thing to realize now, because I've been through so many hard things, that going back to, I asked for this, because I'm asking for everything in my life right now very clearly. I know exactly what I want and why I want it. And so when a really bad situation comes, something that even like crushes me, something that I don't understand, I'm now glad that I'm conscious enough to understand, this sucks. What am I going to learn from this? Right. What is this going to teach me? And the worse it sucks, the bigger the lesson. And so I'm able to mentally change it to a positive, even though it might be one of the worst experiences ever, because I'm sitting there, I'm just like, there's going to be something so valuable from this later. I'm not liking any of it right now, but I need to understand that I asked for this, and this is because of the decisions I've made, and this is what led me here. So let's, instead of it making it crush me, let's see how it can lift me up.
That's in the perspective again. If you don't have that experience of being lifted up, we have medicine for that too.
There's medicine for that too.
If anyone out there follows our social media, you'll see photos of men being raised up, flown, held, cradled, all of the above. Yeah. And again, creating those experiences is what allows us to get through. And so, I would just ask that anyone who's out there, if you feel that urge of like that there's more to you, or that you're ready to check out even. Yeah. Because that's very real right now. Yeah. Like, get with Sacred Sons. Come see what it feels like to have that witness, but also to be of service, because we're doing a both and while we're together.
Yeah.
And I really feel like there's so many people out there right now talking about the problems, talking about the trauma, talking about how hard it is.
Yeah.
And Sacred Sons is here with a very real and simple solution.
Yeah.
It's called Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Come get it.
Yeah. And, you know, when you said the comment about checking out, right? I think a lot of people are terrified about talking about the fact that they've thought about killing themselves.
Right.
And just what I've realized by holding space for so many people in my life, I think more people often than not, if not almost everyone, has had the thoughts of killing themselves before.
Yeah.
So, you know, don't be ashamed. I know this is kind of dark, but I was planning my death, I just was like, I'm just going to plan it all the way through, because I kept having the thoughts and initially going through with it, and then I was like, I'm just going to play this all the way out in my mind. And then once I let the thought completely play out and I imagined the whole thing and I went through it, it went away. But like I kept cutting it in the middle, and I was like too scared of like seeing through it. And I just have like learned, I think, with a lot of worst case scenarios and things that are horrible, like don't cut the thought off, just feel through it, process through it, see what it's trying to show you, and just, okay, now that we've gone through that, I'm done with it, I'm ready to move on, but I needed to let it go ahead and end the movie.
Yeah.
And so that's just something that worked for me. I don't know if that, obviously everyone's different, but just a thought.
I think you're spot on. I think the large majority of people who have thought about checking out, I mean, death is a part of life. It's natural to consider. I had an experience when I was very young. I was like 10 years old. I was in 5th grade. I was home alone. I don't remember why, but I remember being super, super sad.
Yeah.
And I was looking in the mirror, and if we're going dark, I'll just be a little dark about it.
Yeah.
But like I grabbed a knife out of the kitchen. I was just staring in the mirror. I'm 10 years old.
Yeah.
And as I'm standing there staring, I'm just like looking at myself. I can't even remember what I was upset about. The phone rings, like, we had the old school phone that was on the wall with the dial. And I dropped the knife, and I got fucking scared and terrified. Like, oh my God, like someone knows what's happening internally for me. And I answered the phone, and it was a woman's voice. And she's like, Adam, this is Chris's mom. Chris wants to know if you can come over and play. And I was just like, yeah, I'll be right over.
That was God just picking up the phone.
This is God, man. And the important piece for me there was just a friend.
Yeah.
It's like, just go play. And for the rest of the day, I went and played, and assumed we had a great time and stuff. But it's like, man, pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Call somebody.
Yeah.
Be that person on the other line for somebody else.
Yeah.
And watch how much that fills up your cup.
Yeah.
This is kind of like an inversion of how we're indoctrinated into our culture as humans. But I find, just like you were saying with money and being in that currency, the flow with money, being in that flow with our love and with our healing energy provides us so much healing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think it's,
Yeah.
I tell men too at the end of weekends, if nothing else,
Yeah.
get somebody's number, make a friend. There's nothing more valuable in this world.
No, you also bring up a good point, because I can be an overgiver, and I know that that's sometimes triggering for other people, because I will go above and beyond to give my time, to give my energy to others, and they're like, yeah, and I'll feel tired, but also there's just some huge blessing from helping others and being of support. And the other day, my best friend just texted me, and he's like, Joe, I just want you to know that I see how hard you work, how much time you put into helping others, and the world is a better place because of you, and I just love you, and you're an inspiration. And I was fucking depressed that day. I was tired. I was exhausted. I was feeling burnt out. But he read his intuition to just send me that.
That's the reciprocity of giving and receiving.
Yeah, and that's been something I've been leaning into too this last year, is the moment I think of someone, even if it's somebody I haven't spoken to in years, I'll just reach out. And there's been a couple life-changing conversations that have happened for me that way, and it's just listening to your intuition. You're like, why did I just think of Adam? Why did I just think of Baha?
Totally.
God is probably asking you to do him a favor or her a favor and reach out and maybe save this person's life or save your own life, right? And it's just listening. That's part of listening to your intuition. Random people popping into your head like that, it's maybe not so random. Maybe they're reaching out to you. Maybe they said your name and you didn't sneeze at that moment, but you heard their name ringing in your ear. So pay attention to that. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're not going to answer, or maybe they will answer and you reconnected with an old best friend. And there's just so many possibilities, and I like to think of all the positive ones for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, if you're someone who's really but I don't have that.
Yeah.
There are people out here who actually care.
Yeah.
And I know you've been told something else. I know you've been sold something else. Go to sacredsons.com, Sacred
Yeah.
Sons on Instagram. Just kind of feel into it and see what it is. And like I said, we're all over the place in 2024. You did like 6 or 7 events in that first year. We have other guys who do that.
Yeah.
We have hundreds of events now all around the world this year. It's really phenomenal. And again,
And you have the online platform.
we have online training, leadership training. It's all there on the website. But one of the most powerful things about Sacred Sons, aside from our travel, there's no carbon footprint. There's no packaging. There's no plastic involved in what it is that we're bringing to the world. And I feel really proud about that fact. It's our energy and it's our capacity as human beings to care about one another that has grown this movement in such a powerful way.
Okay. I want to make one comment about what we just talked about. Then I want to just talk about Big Bear, and then we can wrap up. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say is, yes, Sacred Sons is there for you, and every man there will hold space for you. But something that changed my life when I was going through it, is I didn't feel safe talking to my friends about it because I felt like I didn't want to burden them. And so I didn't talk to anybody about my problems for years. And I was literally storing all that trauma within myself. And I remember I was leading one of the men's groups that I was leading. And something that changed it for me was like 4 of my best guy friends literally looked me in the eye and they said, Joe, we would be proud for you to call us and talk to us whenever you're going through something.
Yeah.
Do not feel like you're burdening us. And we would be happy to hold that space for you. And I know that's something subtle, but like having permission. So like if you know that one of your guy friends is struggling or your girlfriends, anybody out there is struggling, reaching out and giving them permission. I know it's something subtle, but it really means a lot to the person struggling, because I know for me, I just felt like I was a complete burden. I was depressing them. I was bringing them down. But like, that's the thing about friends is we're not supposed to just be there for the good times. We're supposed to be there during the bad times too, because that's what friendship is. You know, whether the ship is sailing or it's sinking, we are going to be on this ship together. And so that was something huge for me. So I recommend for anybody out there, tell your friends that you're there for them. Let them know it's not just the good, but also the bad. And those people will be there for you forever, and you'll be for them forever. So it's a beautiful reciprocation.
Yeah. And again, willingness is that first step.
Yeah.
Are you willing to receive? For a lot of men, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Are we actually willing to receive help?
Yeah.
When we've been told this whole time to do it all alone, on our own?
Yeah.
Are we actually willing to like be vulnerable and to ask for that help? One of my mentors, shout out to Vince Matoska, he told me once that a man needs 4 men that will carry him to his grave. Literally, you know. And so for a man to take stock of who he has around him and like find those 4 men who could literally carry you to your grave. And maybe one day they will. But do we have that? That connection is so important for our vitality and for us to do whatever it is that we are here to do on this earth. And I am proud to say that I have that. And I know who those men are in my life. And there was a long time where I didn't.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's important to know who supports you and who loves you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I definitely am blessed with a lot of amazing men in my life. I probably think I have more best friends than most people would like to. Like, I actually get in fights with people. They're like, you can't have that many best friends. I'm like, you don't have enough.
A lot of people are they're probably like, Joe's my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe they're my best friend too, right? I think when it comes to best friends,
I got a lot of best friends. I got a lot of bros.
Yeah.
I got a lot of bros.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's also okay, right? Like, that's something that I think is a big stigma is people think that they have to keep their circle small. I'm like, that's silly. I don't understand. Like, I have enough love and capacity for everybody that I meet. And if they give me the energy, I will give them back the energy, right? It's like how much you put into the relationship. There's, of course, going to be people that you put more into it than others. But I think we have a capacity greater than just keeping your circle small. So that's like my mentality on it. I think everybody is an opportunity to make a new friend. I think everyone is an opportunity for a new relationship. And everybody you meet is an opportunity to show you where you're not free. So I want to connect with as many people as possible.
Yeah.
That will make me more free.
Well, this is how we're going to connect with as many as possible, because as we are going around the world, hosting events, hosting these experiences, Sacred Sons has now found our home in Southern California near Big Bear, California. And, we're starting our own retreat facility. We're going to be inviting in not only Sacred Sons events, but the Mana movement, Origins Gathering, other communities fit for service, other communities that are doing this work. We will now have a hub here in Southern California, where the birthplace of Sacred Sons. And it feels so good. It feels so good to know that the amount of work that we have put in is being reciprocated in this way to now, we're honoring the land. We're calling in the directions at every single one of these trainings. And now the land is calling back to us.
Dude,
and saying, like, come home.
I'm so excited.
And you're a part of it. So
100.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying yes and being a part of this vision, this dream that we have.
Of course, dude. I mean, like, if there's anything that I can say is you guys have perpetuated so much healing in my life. I only hope that you can continue this journey for your entire lives. And I know that you will. And it's this just like genuine feeling of just like welcomeness and safe and like safety when I'm at your events. And like, I just think so many men in the world would benefit from this, right? And just being able to go to a place where you can pour your heart and soul out and you can express yourself and be the truest version of yourself without any judgments is just having such a resounding healing effect on the whole planet, right? And it starts on the micro, and you guys are now going to the macro. And also, too, for everyone that's been listening, all the events that they have, you guys are having them at places that are not your facilities. You essentially rent out other people's places. So this is the first time that Sacred Sons is going to have an official home, which they're going to be able to build their own like retreat center.
Our Inipi, our Temescal, our sanctuary space. We're going to build a Maloka. Truly put all of the energy, and we have an army of brothers to help. It's not only raising money to purchase the land and to do those things. We've got brothers who are willing to pour concrete, builders, permaculturists, farmers. This land is 40 acres. There's a lot of potential. There's some incredible trees on the property, and I just look forward to deepening into ceremony and really. Some of these places we go, like Liberty Rising here in San Diego, which has kind of been our proxy home. When this healing work is done, like week in and week out, or month to month, it kind of stays in the land, and the land responds to it. And that's another thing that I'm really looking forward to in Big Bear is like cultivating that relationship with those lands and having the healing continually be there. We're calling it a sanctuary, and so to truly have a sanctuary here is what a gift.
Yeah, I'm so excited to visit it when it's done, man. It's going to be a huge blessing, and just to even have a home base.
It's big enough you could bring your whole family out.
Perfect. I mean, dude, it's also, I think it's awesome that, I know you guys were looking into Hawaii, but I think California is a lot more accessible to a lot of people.
Man, we looked in Hawaii, Mexico, when we were in North Carolina, we were like, okay, North Carolina could be it. But no, we came home to Southern California. I currently live in San Diego, so I'm just like a couple hours away. But yeah, to be here, there's something about California that has an energy.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist in Ohio. I lived in Ohio for 27 years.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
There's an energy. There's energies all around this earth. If you're into grid work, I'm sure you can figure that out. But this particular home, it's beautiful. The land is powerful, and we're going to be doing a lot of good work.
Awesome, dude. I'm super stoked for you, and I send all of you the blessings.
Yes, thank you.
Chat.
Thank you for saying yes and for being a part of it and for walking the walk. You're one who's walking it, man.
Thank you, dude.
There's a lot of people out here talking again, and this pursuit of influence and fame and desire that a lot of young people are getting raised with right now. I think it's important to kind of come back to those circles, no matter how big your circle is. Be famous amongst your friends. Be famous amongst your family. Stop looking for the external validation digitally. Get connected.
Yeah.
Connection is the cure here. Community is the cure.
100%. I agree with all the above. All right. I think on that note, we should probably wrap it up. This was an amazing conversation, my friend. I'm really glad that we got to chat. It's just so interesting coming on this full circle journey with you from where I was back then to where I am now as an individual. Yeah. And you guys just inspired me so much. And it's also awesome too to like be able to relate with you as a friend. Because one thing I did notice is when I first started going to Sacred Sons is I put you guys on such pedestals. And one thing I've learned just from my own life journey is when you put someone on a pedestal, you can't be friends with them. You've now put them up as a mentor and as somebody that's above you. And if they're always above you, it's really hard to relate with them. But when you see someone as your friend, it becomes easy to relate with them. And so it's been nice to go from a place where I felt unworthy, like a loser, that I hated myself, that I didn't even feel worthy to like be friends with you guys, to like feel comfortable enough in my own skin to where I feel that I'm now on my journey. I'm trying to help others. And now I can relate with you guys in a different way. But I also had to go through that.
Yeah.
I had to feel those emotions. And for anybody that feels those emotions and understands, you know, what I was going through, it's like we're all going through different things, but in a similar way, right?
Yeah.
And so if any of this calls to you, feel like you need some Sacred Son stuff, come on out. And I guess just side question real quick, have the women's stuff, the Sacred Sister Circle, is that still going on too?
Not under the name Sacred Sisters. However, we as Sacred Sons are bringing through Sacred Union. We're partnering with a few women's organizations, calling in the leaders of different women's communities. And I'm going to save like the official announcement because we're having a masculine
That's
and
fine.
feminine gathering.
Yeah, because girls always ask me.
They
'cause
always
hear-
ask.
Yeah,
They're
they ask
looking
about
for
the
a dating app or they're looking for Sacred
Something.
Sons. And we don't have a dating app. However, it's time. And I didn't really talk about the origin story of Sacred Sons, but the reason why.
You want to hit on it real quick?
Yeah, I could just say.
Yes.
In 2015, I hosted a family gathering, also in Joshua Tree, and there was about 100 families, 100 people there, men, women, children, aunties, grandmas, grandpas. And at that time, what we noticed was that the men weren't ready. Like the women, they've been circling up in red tents for thousands of years. It's almost like they just intuitively knew how to circle. And the guys were like twiddling their thumbs, like, can we drink beer here? What do we do? You know, and when it was time to like do work, what we saw is that men weren't ready. And so now after all this time, we got the message, like we've built a community of tens of thousands of men around the world speaking a similar language, walking a similar song. And so now it's time to bring it back. And not only for masculine and feminine alignment, but again, we're talking about the babies, the family alignment, the uncles, the aunties, the grandmas, the grandpas coming back together as village once again in this ancient future time. That's what we're bringing through in 2024 later this year. Watch out in September. And I've got a few big announcements that are coming. It's not quite ready yet.
Yeah.
But yes is the answer. That's where this all leads, all of this work in general.
Yeah.
Like, who do we do it for?
Yeah.
We do it for the ancestors. We do it for the culture. We do it for our brothers. We do it for our sisters. And we're doing it from our hearts. And so we're bringing the hearts of men back into the families and back into the village.
Cool. Thank you, man, for being part of my healing journey. God bless you, your family, your new child. And for anybody, once again, who's looking to get information, sacredsons.com, SACREDSONS.com. And you can find all the information there. And any journey you choose is the right journey. Just follow your intuition. Just follow your heart, follow your intuition. And I think the greatest question we're trying to answer is, what do you really want and why? And if you can answer those questions, you'll find all the answers you're looking for.
Find your why. With that, Joe Nasty, the Joe Naz podcast, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons. We're out, family. Peace.